Chapter 2. The Little Taiga Dweller. More than 15 years have passed since I met Anastasia, the hermit of the Siberian taiga. And when I learned that she was going to bear my son, I took great pains to move Anastasia to the city of Novosibirsk, even going so far as to try to intervene physically. Back then, it seemed unacceptable to me for her to give birth in the taiga, and impossible to raise a child outside social institutions. At first, Anastasia's way of life in the taiga seemed strange to me, to put it mildly, but now the way people live in today's giant cities seems even stranger. And when she was pregnant with our daughter and stayed in the taiga, as she had done before with our son, my soul was joyous and calm. My views of life had changed radically in the course of 10 years. Had Anastasia wanted to give birth somewhere other than the taiga, even if she'd been in the best maternity ward in the capital, I'd have fallen into depression and despair. And I'd probably have worried constantly about our child's future if he had ended up being raised and educated with today's societal institutions. I'd rethought my priorities, and my views of life had changed. Anastasia gave birth to our daughter in her family glade in the Siberian taiga. I wasn't present for the birth, but there were no qualified doctors at her side, no modern medical equipment. But in my soul, I was calm. I knew that she was giving birth in one of the most perfect maternity wards on the earth, in her family space. When Anastasia gave birth to our daughter, she asked what I would like to name the newborn. Without thinking, I answered, Anastasia. And that wasn't because Anastasia had named our son Vladimir. It's just that by the time our daughter was born, I'd come to see Anastasia as a wise, brave, and very kind woman. Her name had become synonymous for me with these qualities, and I wanted our daughter to inherit them. I could not imagine anyone other than Anastasia raising our daughter, even though, at many points, her approach to childbearing looks like a total lack of conscious approach to child-rearing. That's far from the case. For example, here's what happened one time with our little daughter in the taiga. This time when Anastasia met me, she was in a jolly mood, even playful, it seemed to me. She appeared suddenly when I was approaching the familiar glade where the three of them were now living. Wearing a light dress reminiscent of a Roman tunic, she stood on my path and smiled. I wondered where she had gotten that dress. I stopped, delighting in the unusual vision. It's really something, I thought. So much time has passed, and she's given birth to 2 children, but she looks just as young and extraordinarily beautiful as before. Look at me, I've grown old and gray, but she doesn't age a bit. I recalled how, waking up early in the morning, she'd take joy in the coming day and set off racing against the she-wolf, performing elaborate somersaults. Would she be able to do that now? As if she'd heard my silent question, Anastasia performed a double somersault with almost no running start at all, and then there she was again, right next to me. Her voice rang out. Hello, Vladimir. I wasn't able to answer right away. A captivating aroma and extraordinary warmth radiated from her body. I shyly touched her on the shoulder. For some reason, I hesitated to embrace her. I responded lamely. And hello to you, Anastasia. She snuggled up against me, hugged me, and whispered, Our darling little daughter is such a smart and beautiful little thing. Then Anastasia walked ahead of me barefoot through the grass. She stepped, putting one foot in front of the other, the way a model does on a runway. This wasn't the first time she'd done this, but every time she does it, her gait looks hilarious, and it raises my spirits. As we usually did, we headed straight to the lake to bathe after my trip. I already knew the purpose of the swim wasn't just so I could freshen up after traveling. The main point of it is to wash away all the smells that weren't native to this taiga glade. To do this, Once I'd taken my first dip, Anastasia would helped me give myself a brisk rub down with paste that she'd made of various herbs. Rubbing me over, she joked, "You're having less and less good food, and your tummy's a little distended." "It's dysbacteriosis. That's what the doctors say. Practically 90% of the population has it," I replied. Anastasia laughed. "Or maybe the whole problem is that tummies don't have enough willpower? You yourself say that 10% of the population doesn't have this dysbacteriosis." I had to walk around for a while with my body, and even my hair coated with this green paste, and then dive back into the water and splash myself with water. After I came out of the water and my body had dried off a bit, Anastasia removed her tunic-like dress and held it out to me. "It would be good for you to put this shirt on now." Anastasia stood before me, her breasts exposed. They were a bit larger than they'd been before. A tiny drop of milk appeared on one nipple. "You're still nursing our daughter?" I asked. "I'm supplementing with milk," Anastasia answered brightly. She squeezed her breast with both hands and splashed me in the face with a stream of milk, and then laughed and wiped the milk all over my face. "If you put this on and belt it, it will look like a shirt on you. I've been wearing this shirt continually since I gave birth to our daughter. Sometimes she would sleep wrapped up in it. She's grown accustomed to its smell and likes the way that it looks. If you do what I tell you, it will be easy for our little girl to get used to you." "But what will you wear now?" "I have two very similar ones, and I've alternated wearing them. The one I'm offering you, that one I wore more. And I'd often fasten my hair with a little braid made of grass. Now I'll go braid one like it for you, too, and meanwhile you can go observe our little girl for a bit." "Just observe her? You mean I'm not allowed to touch her or have contact with her?" "Of course you are allowed, Vladimir. Even so, it is better just to observe her at first. Even though she's little, she's already an independent being, so it's better if you just observe her first without pestering her. You can acquaint yourself with her habits and try to get a sense of her world." "I know that when our son was born, I just observed him at first, too. Tell me, Anastasia, how long before I can pick her up?" "You will feel when the time is right. Your heart will let you know." It seemed to me that Anastasia wanted me to observe our little daughter on my own and try to figure something out, and that's why she'd come up with some urgent tasks of her own. And I wasn't against this way of doing things either. I really did need to find some way to study how our child behaves, because, to my daughter, I was just some uncle she didn't know. And then this strange uncle suddenly goes and picks up the child for no reason at all and starts with his sloppy sentimentality, squeezing her and cooing to her just to make himself happy. But maybe the child hates being cooed at, not just by strange uncles, but in general, no matter who's doing it. And I asked, "Anastasia, where is our daughter now? If you go off to do your braiding, to braid the tie, how will I find her?" "She's somewhere around here, not far away," Anastasia told me calmly. "Try to find her yourself. Let your heart tell you where she is to be found." It seemed to me that I'd begun to understand a lot about life and the taiga glade, but each time something new would still amaze me. How can you allow a child who hasn't even turned 2 yet to walk or crawl around wherever she wants through the taiga and not even keep an eye on her while she does? This is the taiga, where there are no people, and where there are a great many wild animals. In the past, I'd observed my newborn son and had seen him fall asleep against a she-bear's belly, while the she-bear lay motionless, waiting for him to get a good sleep. I saw how wolves would guard the infant, and how nimble squirrels would play with him. It was clear to me that the beasts living here in the glade, or nearby it, were like pets. Within the territories they'd marked, they didn't fight, didn't attack each other. A dog that lives in the same household with a cat might not touch the cat, or might even become friends with it, but he might still attack a cat from outside the family. So it makes sense that here too animals don't attack each other within their defined territory, and they certainly won't attack the human's offspring. They revere the human living on their territory, so naturally they'll protect the human child and consider it an honor to look after him. All the same, this kind of situation was a little unfamiliar. For example, what might happen if the child were to go outside the marked territory? Other wild animals wouldn't treat him the way his own do. Basically, in spite of the logic of it all, some unfamiliar feelings arose in me. But what if I come across some wild animal while I'm looking for our daughter? I asked Anastasia as she was walking off. I'm not used to them, and they're not used to me either. They will not do anything bad to you, Vladimir. You're wearing the shirt, after all. You can walk around with complete confidence and not torment yourself with fearful thoughts. Anastasia ran off to her little earthen home. After I came out into the glade, I didn't find anyone there. And I set off through the forest surrounding the glade, since I figured our daughter might be close by. I decided that if I walked in circles, gradually increasing the diameter, I'd be sure to catch sight of her. And I saw her before I'd even completed my first loop. Little Anastasia was standing alone between some currant bushes. She was holding on to one of the branches and examining some bug and smiling. I hid behind another bush and began observing her. The little girl was dressed in a short, shirt-like dress, her hair bound with a tie woven from the strands of some kind of grass. Once she'd satisfied her curiosity about what was going on the branch, she set off barefoot across the grass in the direction of the glade. Then her foot must have caught on a branch or in the grass, and she fell down. The little girl fell flat on her face on the grass, but she did not cry. Without a word, she braced her little hands against the ground and sat up. Then she crawled a meter or two on hands and knees, and then got to her feet once more, and, stepping slowly, continued along her path. Trying to remain unnoticed, I followed my daughter very cautiously, and suddenly, right before my very eyes, Nastenka appeared. Footnote, Nastinka is a diminutive form of the name Anastasia, used affectionately as a nickname. At first shocked, I stopped and stood stock still for a bit. Then I quickly ran up to the spot where she'd just been walking and began looking all around, but she was nowhere to be seen. Not behind the tree where she'd disappeared, not behind the bush. Little girl couldn't run fast enough to disappear from sight so swiftly. I began to circle around the tree near where she had disappeared, increasing the diameter of the circle with each round, but still I could not see her. I stood for some time, trying to decide what to do, and then I ran to the little earthen house where I figured Anastasia would be. She was calmly sitting at the entrance, braiding a headband out of grass strands and singing quietly. Not far away, the silver fox was rubbing herself against the tree trunk like an affectionate cat. Anastasia, our daughter has disappeared, I blurted out. I was walking a few meters behind her, not taking my eyes off her, then she's suddenly up and it was like she dissolved into thin air. She's nowhere to be found. Anastasia reacted with surprising calm. She didn't even stop her braiding as she answered. Don't worry, Vladimir. I think she's probably in the old fox den now. Who told you that? Do you see the lazy way the fox is rubbing against the tree? Yes, I see. That's her way of letting me know that the child is in her den. Maybe she's trying to tell you something else? If she were telling me about something bad, she would be showing her agitation. She'd run off a bit, then come running back and try to get me to follow her to help. All the same, you can't be 100% certain where our daughter is, especially since there's no den at all in the spot where she disappeared. I looked around everywhere. All right, Vladimir, then let's go have a look together and see where our little clever one has hidden. When we arrived at the spot where the little girl had seemed to dissolve, Anastasia pushed aside some grass, and I immediately glimpsed the den. Its entrance was partially collapsed, and a little hole had formed. I glanced inside it and saw Nastinka sleeping peacefully, curled up on the bottom. There, you see, she's fallen asleep on the damp ground, and I don't think she'll be able to get out of there on her own. Oh, sorry, that was Vladimir speaking. There, you see, she's fallen asleep on the damp ground, and I don't think she'll be able to get out of there on her own. The grass on the bottom is dry, Vladimir. And when our little daughter wakes up, she'll be able to solve the problem of how to get out of her shelter all on her own. How'll she figure it out? If you would like to, Vladimir, you just watch. I'll head back and finish what I was working on. I stayed put. After about 30 minutes, I heard a rustling sound in the hole. The little girl had awakened, but she was having a hard time scrambling out of the hollow on her own. But she wasn't even actually trying very hard to do so. After making her first attempt and testing her own powers, she let out a sound, summoning someone. Yoo-hoo, hey, not a cry, but actual summons. Right away, the vixen that had been hanging around Anastasia earlier appeared. First, she stood at the edge of her former den. She looked in, sniffed, and then, turning her back to the den, lowered her tail into it. The vixen tensed up her muscles and slowly pulled the little girl who had grabbed onto her tail out of the den. The little girl trailed along behind the fox for about half a meter. After that, she let go of the tail, got up onto her hands and knees, and then stood up on her own 2 feet. Little Nastenka took a look around, smiled as if recalling something, and then, stepping slowly, she set off, smiling, in the direction of the lake. I continued to follow her, unnoticed. There were no wild animals around, and it seemed that no one in the taiga, besides me, was watching the little one. But a bit later on, I realized I was wrong about that. It turned out she and I were both being watched very closely, and before long, I for the first time saw a conflict between my daughter and a wild animal in the taiga. When Nastenka had made her way out from amongst the raspberry bushes, she stood where she was for some time and gazed at the mirror-like surface of the lake. Then she took off her short little shirt and, stepping carefully with her bare feet, headed toward the lake. She was about 5 to 6 meters from the water when a tough-looking she-wolf suddenly sprang out of the bushes and, with several powerful leaps, put herself between the shore of the lake and Nastenka. The little girl slapped the beast on the back with her tiny hands and tugged at its fur and touched its snout. By way of reply, the she-wolf licked the child's foot, but that's where the mutual signs of attention or affection ended. Playing with the she-wolf evidently did not enter into Nastenka's plans. She wanted to get into the water, which she first tried to do by taking 3 steps to the side and walking around the she-wolf that was standing at that spot. Nastenka pushed against the beast's side with her hands, attempting to remove the obstacle, but the she-wolf did not obey the child and stood there as if rooted to the spot. Then Nastenka sat down on the grass, thought a bit, and made an attempt to crawl under the she-wolf's belly. But this attempt did not meet with success either. The she-wolf pressed herself down to the ground. Evidently, Nastenka understood that the beast was not letting her get to the water and that she could not remove the obstacle using force. She sat on the grass for some time, pondering something, then started to crawl and even move away from the she-wolf and the lake. Before long, she stood up, a small twig in her hands. She walked up to the she-wolf's snout, ran the twig along it, and threw it in the direction of the forest. The twig only flew about 1.5 meters. The she-wolf jumped for the twig and grabbed it with her teeth. And as this was going on, Nastenka set off running toward the shore of the lake, her little legs pumping away. The she-wolf understood that she had been outsmarted, and with 2 headlong jumps, she caught up to the child at the water's edge and knocked her off her feet. Nastenka fell onto her back, and her head touched the water. Pushing against the sand with her little legs, she tried to push herself farther out into the lake. The she-wolf grabbed the child's foot with her teeth. She was probably trying not to cause the child any pain. Her grip was light. Nastenka pushed her second leg into the she-wolf's nose, pulled out the sole of her foot from the she-wolf's maw, and, in high spirits, crawled off into the water. The shore in the spot dropped off sharply to the depths of almost a meter, and the little tot was submerged in the water up to her head. But right then she dove out. Working her little arms and legs, she kept herself on the surface of the water. I did not think our daughter could swim well. I ran out from my hiding place, intending to jump in the water, but when I got to the shore, I saw the she-wolf swimming up to the child. Splashing about in the water, the little girl nested against the wolf's side and took hold of the fur with her little hands, and they swam along the shore in the shallows. Nastenka let go of the she-wolf as soon as she felt the lake bed beneath her feet. The wet she-wolf came out onto the shore and shook herself, the splashing spray glinting in the sun. She didn't run away, but remained on the shore, attentively watching the child out of the corner of her eye, and also, as it seemed, warily glancing at me. And Nastenka, standing in the water up to her waist, smiled and eagerly kept calling to the she-wolf to come over to her. She'd slap her little hands on the water and beckon her with a wave, but the she-wolf did not go to her. It's possible that the beast did not like this watery business, or that games in the lake seemed dangerous. Nastenka suddenly turned her little head in my direction and froze. For the first time, I felt my little daughter's gaze fixed on me, and I stood there beneath her gaze, powerless to move a muscle. I understood that she perceived me as some kind of baffling creature that had suddenly appeared in the territory she inhabited. She looked me over for some time, then turned away and came out of the water onto the shore, taking her time, and walked up to the she-wolf lying on the grass. The she-wolf picked up the little dress in her teeth and gave it to the little girl, but Nastenka did not want to put it on her damp body. She took the clothing and set it off in the direction of the dugout. She took the clothing and set off in the direction of the dugout at the edge of the glade. I continued observing her path through the taiga and thinking. A tiny child is walking, smiling, through a glade deep in the Siberian taiga, and nothing frightens her. Nobody attacks her. Quite the contrary, the wild animals are prepared to rush to her aid at any moment's notice. A tiny person is walking along, the way a royal heir walks through her kingdom. It's interesting for her to observe the bugs, the squirrels, and how the birds live, to examine the flowers and test the blades of grass and berries and see how they taste. But at this same time, some other little girl of the very same age finds herself in a space bounded by 4 walls, and within it, she's confined within 4 little playpen walls, like some kind of little wild animal. And it does not matter that the walls are pretty, and her kind parents buy up all sorts of plastic toys for her, and she tests them to see how they taste. Millions of little girls and boys in our world grow up in apartment cages, like little wild animals. And then we want them to grow up into intelligent, free, and noble people. Well, these individuals cannot even imagine. Freedom, first of all, means free thought, knowledge, and a perception of the living universe. A child will be told about this living universe in school when he grows up a bit. Of course, he'll receive certain information about the great world of living nature, about the universe created by the great creator, but he will never be able to perceive it through his own experience. You cannot replace the perceptions a person can receive in the first years of his life while living in harmony with the great world of the creator. Not through exerting effort or straining himself, but conversely through playing. There are no school lessons or university lectures at all that can replace this. I am not encouraging anyone to head out into the taiga with children. That would be idiotic. Even so, we have to do something.